So when I finished school, and my first job was as a fund manager with Aberdeen. And at the time, Aberdeen hired a lot of management trainees. They were Scottish firms, so they were very tight with money. You know, they always believe like, we'll hire young people, fresh graduates, nurture them, and then they'll move up the ranks. And Aberdeen was a pretty small company back then. It was about $30 billion of assets under management. I mean, it sounds big, but in the world of asset management, it's pretty small. So I got in as a grad trainee, and they moved me around. So I did a bit of business development work and then investment work. So after that, they asked, where did I want to be? And I said, I want to be in investment. So I covered frontier markets and emerging markets. So these were countries that were not very well invested in. So think about Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Vietnam. This was back then, 20 years ago. So I enjoyed it. And I remember my interview process with my then boss. He asked, why do you want to be a fund manager? I said, actually, I don't know anything about fund management, but I'm just intrigued by the potential of being able to travel and see the world. Really, that was the thinking back then. But I really grew to enjoy the job. And my job was really to go to all these countries and do a lot of work researching companies that we could invest in, but with a longer term horizon, very, very long term, which meant that, you know, we were looking at the dynamics of political structure in those countries, stability of government policies, and all that sort of thing, right? And most importantly, management ability, because we were not investing in the companies, we were investing in the people who were running the companies. We were not running a supermarket, we were not running a bank, they were running the bank, but we trusted them to do it. So that's where I built a lot of my people skills, because there was a lot of need to interact, speak to them, ascertain whether they could be trusted with our money. So I enjoyed doing that, and that work then got me to various countries. Aberdeen was in a very acquisition mode at that point in time. So we were acquiring a lot of companies, and we had this undeniable ambition to be the largest fund management company, and we did. We absolutely did. You know, I joined at 30 billion. When I left, we were about 850 billion. We were the largest European asset manager. A few years into the job, then my boss came to me and said, we've got a license to operate in Malaysia.
Oh, so when you started this job, it wasn't in Malaysia, it was overseas?
Yeah, it was in Singapore, it was in the UK. And then said, would you like to go back to Malaysia? And I said, oh, why? And then he said, well, we just got a license to operate a fund management company. You know, this was time when Malaysia was liberalizing the fund management sector, and they were giving out licenses. So yeah, then I helped come back to Malaysia to set up the entity. It was a greenfield entity. It was a very successful greenfield operation. We then went on to set up an Islamic entity, which I then went to become CEO. So that was my first foray into becoming a CEO at 27 years old at that point in time. So I thought it was an absolute privilege. You know, 4 years into my working career, I was a head of investment. Then 2 years later, a CEO and CIO. So I enjoyed it. I learned a lot of things about client development, fundraising, investing. I did a lot of some of the acquisitions that Aberdeen did in the UK, Indonesia, Japan. So it was a very global role. I've always said I've not been a fan. I've not been a fan because, again, it's not driven by fundamentals. It's not driven by fundamentals. Someone can say something about it and it goes up, and also, end of the day, it's not regulated, right? You know,
but
so
it is trying to get regulated by the SEC and whatnot.
So if it gets regulated, then yes. But you know, in its current shape or form, probably not. And I think there's still for it to be accepted as a legal tender in many places. And I foresee that to have a lot of challenges. How that would coexist with the current shape of currency now. And also, I think we need to also understand how do you value this? How do you value this, right? You know, whereas traditional money, you know, there is a money supply element to it that you can kind of put a value on. I still struggle with that. So I think it's some way to go before I think it gets that kind of legitimacy that it kind of craves for right now.